internet, if you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you're not, you may have noticed it's been a few weeks since I've posted here. A few weeks ago, I spoke at the Objective Standard Institute's Level Up conference about the roots of war and the path to peace. That conference was just an amazing experience, and I suggest everyone check it out for next year if you haven't already. After that, I took some time to take care of myself, both mentally and physically, but especially mentally. Talking about such intense and emotional topics like war can really take a toll on your mental health, and I suggest that everyone take a break from social media every once in a while, whether you are creating content or consuming it. Now that I've given you guys an update on where I've been, let's dive back into things. So a few people in my comments have asked me, okay, Kaya, you say that you're pro-Israel, you say that you support Israel, you've been very, very active in defending the existence of Israel, but you never call yourself a Zionist. Why is that? Aren't you a Zionist by definition? And this is a really, really good question because I get called a Zionist all the time by people who either see it as a compliment or as an insult, but yeah, I've never called myself a Zionist myself. So if you really want a full answer to this question, we're gonna have to dive a bit into history and unpack where this term came from and what it means. So the modern Zionist movement was founded by a man named Theodor Herzl, who was an Austro-Hungarian Jew who witnessed the Dreyfus Affairs. The Dreyfus Affair was a scandal that happened in 1894 France, where a Jewish French officer was accused of being a German spy, even though there was basically no evidence. They were questioning whether a Jew could ever fully assimilate to Europe, or if they were first and foremost loyal to some worldwide Jewish conspiracy. Now, Dreyfus ended up being convicted of treason and sentenced to life in prison, even though a few years later it was revealed that he was innocent the whole time. Herzl was following this case, and he could not believe the amount of anti-Semitism that he was seeing. Herzl was not religiously Jewish, he was secular, and he considered himself to be culturally Hungarian, nationally Hungarian. He did not consider himself to be part of some great Jewish hive mind. After the trial, people flooded the streets screaming and chanting all sorts of anti-Semitic garbage, like calling for the death of Jews. And Herzl realized that if this was happening in France, which was one of the most liberal countries in the world, something really bad was going on. And this wasn't just an isolated instance of anti-Semitism at the time. Culturally, Europe was becoming very comfortable with outwardly hating Jews. For example, in Russia at the time, they had already begun pogroms against the Jews who lived there. So this wasn't just paranoia or overreaction from him. There were Jews being displaced, killed, and treated as second-class citizens all over Europe. And of course, less than 50 years later, in the 1930s and 40s, the Holocaust happened. So Herzl is seeing all this anti-Semitism around him, and he decides that the Jews who are living in Europe need to have a country where they can go and be safe. And this country was not going to be a Jewish state, as in a Jewish theocracy. It was going to be a secular country with freedom of speech, freedom of religion, property rights. It was going to be a Western, mostly free society. Now, Herzl wasn't perfect. He didn't support my ideal free market capitalist country. But his vision for the country of Israel would still make it one of the freest countries in the world. Now, when he started putting this plan into motion, he wasn't set on any one location. He looked somewhere in South America, thought that maybe he could negotiate something there. He had his eyes on Africa. He thought maybe Uganda would be a good place for them to go. He didn't care where this country was. What he cared about was just creating the country that would keep Jews safe. All that he cared about was that it would happen, wherever it would happen. Finally, it became pretty obvious that the best place for this to happen would be in the land that we now know as Israel. Now, there were some Jews who already lived under the Ottoman Empire at the time, but mostly it was because Jews were starting to move there. They were starting to buy land and build communities because of the rapidly increasing safety risk in Europe. Now, Herzl ended up dying before the state was established, but you probably know the rest of the story. The Ottoman Empire fell in 1922, and those Jewish communities became part of a British mandate, which then became Israel in 1948. And Israel really was, and is, as far as my research has shown, what Herzl wanted it to be. It is a liberal, free Western country, and their founding document explicitly states this. Their founding document says, "The state of Israel will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture." And today, Israel is still a place where people of all different languages, religions, and races live together peacefully. Now you might be asking, okay, Kaya, if you support Israel's existence, its laws, and why it came to be in the first place, why would you not call yourself a Zionist? Well, because, some people do use the word Zionist in this original sense to describe all of the things I just described. There are a lot of other people who add kind of another layer to it. Their belief isn't simply that Jews have the right to live in a country where they can be safe from violence and have the right to create that country if it doesn't exist. They believe that Jews have the right to live specifically in that land of Israel because their ancestors lived there 2,000 years ago. And there are two parts to this argument. First, there is a religious argument that Israel is this holy land that was promised to the Jews by God because they are the chosen people. Then there's an argument that Jews have this ethnic or racial tie to the land because their ancestors lived there 2,000 years ago. So the problem I have with the religious argument is that I'm an atheist like Theodore Herzl. And I'm an atheist because there is no evidence that there is a God or that any religion is true, so I don't accept supernatural claims to any land. As for the ethnic argument, I don't believe that people have imaginary strings tying their blood to the land, and so then those people have to live there because you can't disconnect these magical strings from the dirt. I don't think that anyone has a right to live anywhere because of their race or ethnicity. I don't believe that I have a right to live in Africa or even like New Jersey because my family lived there once. What ends up happening is that people end up package dealing these legitimate reasons for supporting Israel, that it's a liberal, mostly rights-respecting country, with these woke collectivist ideas that I really just don't support. And I think that it tears the whole concept of Zionism down. Now, although I have my issues with the term Zionism, I want to clarify that I am obviously not an anti-Zionist. If the Zionist movement in the most vague terms supports Israel's right to exist, although for varying reasons, the anti-Zionist movement is the opposite. It does not support Israel's right to exist, and there are varying reasons there too. Some anti-Zionists are willful idiots who believe that Israel is this theocratic ethno-state that doesn't have the right to exist because it oppresses its people and launches wars against its neighbors. Other people are fully aware of what Israel is and they just hate Jews. Now, obviously, I don't agree with these takes. I don't agree with the first take because, I do my research. I know what Israel is. I know history. I know what it's done. Israel is not a theocracy. It allows Jews, Christians, Muslims, and even atheists like myself to live together peacefully with freedom of religion under the government. It is also not an ethno-state. It is incredibly racially diverse. And as for why I disagree with the second reason, I'm not a raging anti-Semite, so there's that. I do have to say though, for a lot of people in that first group who are incredibly misinformed, when they hear the term Zionism, one of the reasons why they think that Israel is this theocratic ethno-state is because they keep hearing about these advocates for supernatural ties to the land. When again, that's just not what Israel is at all. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably controversial and not like I stray away from that on this channel, but I wish that Israel didn't have to exist. I wish that the anti-Semitism that is occurring now and has occurred throughout history didn't exist and that Jews could live wherever they wanted without fear of violence against them. So I wish that Jews didn't need a refuge to go to be safe from all of the craziness that has happened in the world. But unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in. Israel not existing means that Jews who are living in Europe 100 years ago would have had nowhere to go. If Israel didn't exist, any Jew that was living in Palestine, if that's what you want to call it, would have been killed, displaced, or treated as a second-class citizen, like we've seen in these other Middle Eastern countries, like we've seen in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, and in the West Bank. I wish we lived in a world where we could all live together peacefully and no demographic has to fear genocide or oppression. But again, unfortunately, that's just not the world we live in right now. So I will continue to advocate for that world to exist one day. But today, Israel is needed, and it is needed because it is an example to the rest of the world of the direction we need to move towards. Although I don't call myself a Zionist and I don't see that changing anytime soon, I will continue to support Israel as long as it follows in the legacy of Theodore Herzl and continues to be a beacon of hope for liberalism and Western civilization. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more from me, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.